Hello, everyone, and welcome to what we call Huddle Up with Howard. I'm Mike Claiborne. He's Howard Richards. And Howard, another week of football is here. Let's talk a little bit about Mizzou, first of all. It says on the schedule that they're playing Massachusetts. As Kerry Davis would say, this is kind of a bye week.
It should be. So what you're saying is that Mizzou will have back-to-back bye weeks.
When you're favored by 40-something points, it's a pretty good shot that you're going to do okay. Now, with that said, it's homecoming.
Yeah, it is.
Right. So you got to have blood donor or somebody you think you can beat for homecoming. This will be the last time we'll see a lot of players get some playing time as you get deeper into the meat of the schedule. God forbid you have an injury. And also, it's one last time I think you can really kind of fine tune things as far as getting a longer look at players without unveiling what you plan on using for the rest of the conference.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. You know, the thing about this game, then there's a bye week before Alabama comes home comes to Columbia for Mizzou's final home game of a 6-game homestand. Yeah, that's right, 6 games. And I'll say this: traditionally, Mizzou does not play well coming out of
buys. Yeah,
and so that bothers me. The fact that they're going into Alabama the following week. However, the fact that they've been at home. You know, they have this game where they can rest starters probably in the second half more than, and again, not a knock against the UMass program, but let's be real about this. Let's be real about it. I'm just being real. I'm not trying to be negative here. I'm trying to stay positive.
No, you're being objective. It's what you
objective.
Are. Yeah. Uh-huh.
So I think I like where Mizzou is. And again, the one thing that this team has to avoid is a letdown. Now they'll talk about not letting down. However, the preparation needs to be the same. In fact, if I were Drink, I would work his team as hard, if not harder, because you can get that work in, but also to change their mindset. I'm not going to allow you to relax.
We're not going to get distracted because it's UMass and it's homecoming weekend.
Absolutely. And I think that's the best thing. That's the best approach that he could do. It's certainly what I would do if I were coaching.
Yeah. And when you think about UMass, and I really haven't, I think about John Calipari, Marcus Camby, Bruiser Flynn, Julius Irving. I never think about UMass as a football team. But you know what? Somebody thought it was a good idea to put them on a schedule. They're on a schedule, so you deal with it and you move on because you have bigger things to worry about down the road.
Yeah, indeed. And just ironically, Mizzou played there last year.
Yeah.
And I will tell you this, that there are high schools in the state of Texas that have better football facilities than what they had at UMass.
I think there are high schools in the state of Missouri that may have better facilities for what I'm told. All right, let's talk a little bit about the college scene, not necessarily the games, but there was an interesting ruling that came down where the player from Indiana has been granted more years of eligibility, really kind of piggybacking on Pavia, the quarterback out of Vanderbilt, who went to court, and he found himself getting more years. Now, it's my understanding that the rulings have changed where it used to be if you had 2 years of junior college, you have 2 more years of eligibility at a Division I school. Now, it's like junior college is one thing, and you get 4 years of eligibility for the Division I schools, along with the fact, and I guess does it come down to the fact that players are getting paid now and it's a job as well, that they have this opportunity to continue to earn money?
It could be. There's probably any number of factors as to why this is happening. They're still talking about the COVID year and still talking about, if guys only played X amount of quarters, that they could still redshirt. Yeah. So who knows? I mean, Mizzou played against a player last week at South Carolina, one of the running backs, Rasul Faizan. He was in his 7th year. I played pro football for 7 years. So now I'm just thinking about him as a prospective professional football player. I'm not sure that he's going to get a great look, but he's already washed up as a running back, right?
Exactly.
It's unfortunate for him.
It's unfortunate, and you hope these young men are able to do something with their money if they can make some in this regard. But it also says, somebody brought up the point to me recently, that the quarterbacks, the reason why they're playing so well when they come out of college is because they're old enough. They're older than some of the guys that they're playing against. And I think that's a plus to that. And I think Bo Nix is a good example out in Denver.
I agree. And if you just look at South Carolina's quarterback, LaNorris, who's a redshirt sophomore, he's actually eligible to enter the draft after this season. Should he or should he not? I think a lot of it will depend on how well he plays the rest of the way.
I think it depends on how much money South Carolina can muster up to keep him there.
That, you know,
because he's going to make more. Let's say if he's mid-round pick in the draft, he's going to make more on campus than he's going to make in the NFL.
But he's already projected, I'd say before last Saturday, as a first-round pick.
Okay, well, that's a different story.
But that is a different story. However, that can easily change. Again, it depends on his health and also, you know, how productive he is for the rest of the 2025 season.
Well, it's going to be an interesting situation that I believe that before it gets resolved, I can guarantee you this. Maybe because it's going to be an election year next year, I really see Congress getting involved in regulating this a little bit more because nobody cares what the NCAA does anymore. I mean, when's the last time you saw somebody go on probation? I mean, now they told Jim Harbaugh he can't come back for a while. They suspended the coach for a game or two. But, you know, when it comes to the rules being maintained, they really don't have the teeth that they used to.
They don't. However, I think that the leagues, especially those in the Power Four, I think they have the ability, especially with the additional revenues that are coming their way. I think they have the ability and could hire additional staff to regulate themselves.
Oh, I think, yeah, I agree with you. Yeah.
So why have the extra layer? You have the distance issue, the communication issue with the NCAA. Why not keep it in-house? And I think everyone, because of how they communicate throughout the week, I think it would be much, much better. Much like the NFL. Could you imagine with professional sports having to deal with yet an outside entity that is making all these decisions on, you know, eligibility or fines or whatever the case may be? I just think it's better. It would be more useful, more attractive, and more practical if they keep it all in-house.
So tear up the current manual, put down a new set of commandments.
Yeah.
And move on from there.
Well, everything else is evolving in the sport.
Yeah.
And tell me what benefit the NCAA really brings to college sports other than having its name on the basketball tournament.
That and the fact that they know how to stage an event to protect the brand of their sponsors. And you talked about the basketball tournament. They strategically put things in places where it's going to be seen on TV in basketball, and they do it in football as well. So I would probably keep most of that mass and add on to it, but I would also tear up the current manual and start over with the things that are truly pertinent to what they're trying to do.
Yeah, I think it certainly begs having a whole rewrite of the way they do things, because a lot of those the rules and regs are in the way that they legislate things across the sport are very archaic.
All right, college football this weekend. Not a lot of games that I would see mouthwatering. Illinois USC should be fun because Illinois, they got taken to the woodshed last week, and we don't see USC enough. So, but they're in the Big Ten. That could be an interesting game because USC has to travel to Illinois.
Yeah, they do. And you know, I saw a bit of USC Purdue a few weeks ago. USC, you know, had a big defensive lineman that had a stupid score and ran one in. I don't know if, as the season goes on, depending on how many trips they have to make back east, if that wears them down. But Purdue's not at the same level as Indiana, as Illinois.
Why don't, you know, if we're going to maintain this, why don't schools just rent out a hotel? Guys can take their classes virtually, and they can still have a place to practice and do everything they need to do.
You know, I think we're heading in that direction, especially as more revenue comes in, because, you know, the travel is expensive. I mean, you can play back-to-back West Coast teams if it's a UCLA or USC. If you schedule it that way, it would make sense, you know, rent a hotel in Westwood or wherever the case may be. Let your guys, you know, recuperate, rest, practice that week, get on a bus and drive 30 minutes as opposed to, flying 4 hours to the West Coast. We're probably getting to that. And as you know, there's precedent for that in sports leagues. You're doing an NFL team may fly west or vice versa, fly east, stay on the East Coast, and then your flight to that particular venue, or you bus if you're staying in that general area. It's a lot shorter. It's a lot less difficult physically, mentally for your players.
I just think, and it comes down to scheduling too, where each school is required to take a two school road trip. The further distance you go, you're going to set up camp in between those two places and do your thing, but you're going to stay out on the road, and you only do it one time a year. So it's not like something we have to get back on a plane and go play UCLA after we play USC. So the logistics can be resolved. I don't think that's a big issue. All right. The other item I wanted to run by you, Mike Gundy, no longer the head coach at Oklahoma State. 20 years is a long time to be doing anything in sports, but he was able to do it.
He had a decent run there for a while, but the last couple of years, I think it's a perfect example of, and I use this word a lot, evolving. You have to evolve as a coach. You look at how some programs have elevated themselves. Case in point, University of Central Florida. That the first coach at Central Florida was my former teammate at Mizzou, Jim Levitt, 20 years ago, however long it's been. But they've evolved. Their facilities have grown. Their recruiting, everything has gotten better. I believe Gus Malzahn is the head coach there. 20 years at one institution, maybe he just got stale. Maybe he just got stagnant, complacent.
He's been there longer than most presidents at universities.
Absolutely.
I wonder how many athletic directors he went through as well.
There would be something for the researchers to find out. But it's, again, if he hasn't changed, and from all accounts, he probably has changed very little. I don't know how many different changes have occurred on his coaching staff. But listen, in this day and age, recycling is not your friend.
No,
you've got to bring in fresh ideas, and coaches that adapt to the type of, offenses and defenses that you're employing. So
do you see the shift from a coaching standpoint where I'm seeing more assistant coaches going to the NFL because the way the college thing is set up between the NIL and the portal and all the pressure to win, guys are just saying, you know what? I'd rather just coach instead of do all the other things. I'm seeing a few more guys looking for NFL jobs. And you know what? The NFL is starting to pay their coaches better.
Yeah, they pay their coaches well. The problem is how many slots are there? It's very limited.
You got to know somebody.
You got 130.
You better have something really special in your back pocket that would have a team that would be interested in you.
Yeah, you've got 130 FBS in the football bowl subdivision teams. 32 teams in the NFL. So those opportunities are few and far between.
So you think about, let's say your coaching staff is rounding off as a number of 10 legitimate coaches who have positions. That's 1,300 coaches looking for jobs that only supplies 320. So it's a little bit of a challenge, and creates a lot of competition.
Yeah, and it's like the players also, everyone vying for a roster spot, and plus your rosters on NFL teams are much smaller than, guys that you see on the college level. We're 85 now, I guess it is. And there's only 53-man roster.
Was grousing about that the other day where they can only have 85 guys. Can you imagine?
Only 85. That's a luxury.
If an NFL coach heard you say that, you got 85, I have 53, and 50 of them I can trust. I mean, it's a vast difference. And if there's a league that needs more players, it would be the NFL.
Yeah.
Especially the way the schedule is set up.
Well, and think about this, and I think it's a longer shot than people realize, trying to expand the schedule to 18 games without making adjustments to the preseason. You really will need to expand either the active roster or practice spots.
And the schedule, you have to enhance. Maybe another bye comes into play. But I think you also have to expand the roster.
No, I think you do.
I think you have to expand the roster. You have to add an extra lineman. Everybody, you should add 11. Well, not necessarily add 11 spots, but increase it. But maybe increase your practice squad too.
Yeah, and
So,
I totally agree. I
now,
mean, you
with-
should be at least 2 deep, at
with
least
that-
2 deep everywhere you go.
With that said, are there enough good players to go around?
Oh, I think so.
Okay.
I mean, I've seen every year when I was with the Cowboys, players that were cut that should have, I mean, or were good enough to make the active
Didn't
roster.
get enough reps.
They just didn't have, or there's just no slots.
Yeah.
Preferential to the veterans. They know what this veteran can do. You don't know that you can trust a rookie or first year player because you haven't seen them.
Yeah.
So it's a gamble. Do I make this choice, choose an aging player, or do I infuse, a youthful player that maybe is going to give me more years? But by the same token, I can pay him less money than I'm paying.
And with the cap, you got to watch every nickel.
That's exactly true.
You've been in enough camps. I was always told that if you have a 53-man roster, there may be 5 spots open because between the draft and the ascension of other players, you kind of know what your team looks like or what it should look like. So there may be 5 spots that might be open for competition, even though you bring in a ton of guys. There's only really 5 spots, if that many.
So I think my rookie season, case in point, and now it's different. It's 40 plus years ago. We had 8 of us make the team.
Mm-hmm. That's a lot.
It was a lot. So there were, 2 defensive backs, a receiver, a couple linebackers, no defensive linemen, 3 rookie offensive linemen. How many is that? That's probably 8 right there. Yeah.
That's
and then 1 other receiver, Ron Fellows from Missouri.
Ron Fellows, he was a good player. All right. NFL. What a great game we had on Monday night between the Ravens and also the Detroit Lions. Is Detroit for real? I mean, they went into Baltimore and now this is a team that had a good defense. I wouldn't say they kept Lamar in check because anytime you score 30 points on somebody was missing a tackle or missing a play somewhere. But I think that with them losing both coordinators and them making some other moves in their offensive line, I wasn't sure about Detroit. And then they lost their first game. So I'm saying to myself, well, maybe this is the Lions of what we consistently think of. What do you think as far as how legit they are, especially after going into Baltimore?
I think that a lot of clubs that have tasted success, have determined that there is a formula by which we must adhere to in order to stay on top. Because Detroit for decades was a bottom dweller, right? I mean, a doormat.
Yeah.
But now that Dan Campbell has come in, that organization is viewed now as one of the top franchises
led by Brad Holmes, who used to be in the Rams PR department.
There you go.
Did a nice job there, and now he's ascended to this. You know what? We're going to try and get Brad on the show here at some point, one of those off days. I ran into him a couple of years ago. Still the same delightful guy, but to watch that organization ascend in the manner that it has, you have to give him a lot of credit, especially in hiring Dan Campbell.
Yeah, it would be great to hear his insights as to, how they, their processes, how they evaluate players. Because let's face it, that's the key. How do you evaluate your talent from year to year? What makes Detroit different from a team like Dallas? Obviously, those that are running the show make a difference, but Jerry Jones, in just case in point, we're going to use him a lot on this show because why not?
He's stepping in it every week for some reason or another.
He's not out there on the road scouting and watching tape video on players every week. He's not doing that. But a guy like Brad Holmes, he's got a whole scouting department. That's what he's doing. Now, Jerry may make the ultimate decisions, which aren't necessarily the best decisions. Just look at what's happened this year with this team, the last couple of off seasons. But I would really like to hear from a guy like Brad Holmes to understand what his process is and how they've been able to maintain at the level, because they're right there on the edge, and it's getting into the playoffs and being able to ascend to that championship level. Not going to win them every year, but to get there, you got to get there first.
Yeah, I think the one and done left a bad taste in their mouth, but they had a chance to experience it. And so now you say, we've been there. let's do that instead of done that. And I think that's what we're looking for next. And the other thing is, man, you have to stay healthy in this league.
Yeah,
I mean, this is a league, man, that does not have pity on players going down, and they just figure it out, which is where scouting comes into play. And knowing when I sign a guy or we draft a guy, he's got to be ready to go sooner than what most people think, because especially linemen, you get a lineman that goes down, and all of a sudden you're looking around, and all of a sudden you say to yourself, well, we thought he was a good guy because he was a bouncer in a bar. No, this is the real deal. So scouting, I think, is just so important. And what you mentioned about Brad, they have it figured out. And there's a few teams that have been able to do that. I look at Baltimore and how they've been able to find players. Now, they've had good drafts. Mm-hmm. They were able to sign Derrick Henry. But there's some other good players that they've been able to find that have been able to step in, and they normally don't miss a beat. So I'm looking forward to how this season is unfolding. And I said at the beginning of the year, I think this is going to be an epic year. We're not going to have an undefeated team. That's not going to happen.
I don't think you'll ever see.
I agree with you. I think the way
at any
I agree. College
also.
Especially.
Yeah.
But you're going to have a very good team that's going to stub their toe somewhere along the season, but they'll be able to show up, and if they stay healthy, they can have a run unlike anything we've seen, because there's so many good players. I mean, the quarterback position, I don't know if I've ever seen it healthier right now. Now, the challenge is, can you have an offensive line and a running game to support that when December rolls around, when the weather changes and teams is a little bit beat up. And that's why I always like Baltimore, because when in doubt, hand it off to Henry, and let's see what it's like to tackle a guy after he's been beat up for 15, 16 weeks.
Listen, any good team will tell you building an offensive line is your key. You can have pedestrian running backs that will do well if the daylight's there for them to run through those holes. If they can pass protect, even for an average quarterback, as long as he's got decent accuracy, and you got average players, but having an offensive line that can get you yards when you're running the football and can keep the quarterback upright and minimize the hits on him, you've got a chance to win in this league.
I'm glad you brought that up, because the New York Giants decided they were going to go with their first-round pick, Jackson Dart, replacing Russell Wilson. Now, I'm not saying Russell Wilson is the second coming of Johnny Unitas, but has anybody seen that offensive line they have in New York? Remember the guy 2 weeks ago, he had 4 penalties before halftime.
First drive.
Right? So that tells me right off the bat that there is a concern. And when you have one guy like that, it can be contagious along the line, because now the guy next to you feels like not only does he have to do his job, he's got to look out for you. And now when he splits his focus, nothing gets accomplished. So when I see them talk about quarterback changes, I always say, let's look at the offensive line and what they're doing that has made this guy either scramble too soon, throw it too quickly, throwing it off balance, not being able to step up in the pocket because there is no pocket. All those things I think have to come into account before I start making quarterback changes.
And taking that a step further, looking at the New York Giants, who was their quarterback the last few years?
That's a great question.
Daniel Jones.
Daniel Jones, who's gone somewhere else.
Indy, and had maybe his best game, a career day last week.
And they can run the ball there too.
Yes, they can.
So I mean,
why?
Because they have an offensive line. Folks, we just tell it like it is. And this is when I see people talk about the game and the quarterback play, they never talk about the people up front. Just like the guy in Ike Hilliard gets fired in Atlanta, the receivers coach, because he was in charge of the passing game. It's kind of hard to pass if you don't have any protection. It's very difficult to pass a football when your running game isn't there to offset the pass rush. So, this is a business where sometimes they do put the horse before the cart. I mean, the cart before the horse. And this is when anarchy starts. And for me, looking at these teams pushing the panic button on a quarterback or a passing game coordinator without looking at what the offensive line isn't doing, I think is unfair.
Well, and it comes down to perception. How do your fans perceive what's going on your team? Head coach, in an effort to salvage his role, if he's dealing with a general manager that he has more control over, that coach will say, well, I got to get rid of my receivers coach. I got to get rid of my line coach, or whatever the case may be. I can do this. Maybe we made a bad hire, in this position as position coach earlier. Let me find out. Let me elevate the next guy. Or next season, let's find someone else that's more experienced. I got my eyes on this guy here. But he's trying to save his behind, of course.
Yeah. But here's the other thing about that. Okay, I'm gonna get rid of my my receivers coach. So I'm gonna go to another coach and say, can you take that responsibility on? And he's gonna say yes, but he may be having a hard time just fielding his squad. Now he's got to worry about another squad. Now you're going to bring up a guy who's a quality control assistant. He's going to now be more involved. There's a lot of things that can go wrong here.
Yeah. And that often happens.
Yeah.
You know, especially in an emergency situation when a coach is, you know, sent packing for whatever reason, you know, because of something that had maybe occurred during that week. They've got to make a change. So you've got to elevate someone that's ready. So it's not beyond the realm of possibility. In fact, it's more likely that a lot of your quality control analysts on your under your employ are coaches in waiting. They're waiting for their opportunity to move up.
All right. Well, we've addressed that issue. A couple other things on the schedule. Not necessarily an overwhelming schedule this weekend, but now we're going to go across the pond and play football. I wonder what I haven't done that trip, but I have to wonder how much of a recovery time does it really take if you haven't done it before? Because you go over early. That's great.
Yeah.
We did it with the Cardinals in baseball, went over early, and it took a couple of days for everybody to kind of settle in once you got back. So I'm thinking with the physical grind that it takes in football, how much recovery time do you think it'll take?
Well, I did it with Cowboys and played the Bears in '86 in London. And I mean, first of all, just look at logistics of flying 8-9 hours both ways. You get adjusted to the time zone. It's going to take you 3 to 4 days to make that adjustment. Not everyone makes that adjustment.
Or you can do like me, just stay up all night.
Well, I mean, there is that to try to get on it. Yeah, to try to get on a schedule. You know, so many little things that people don't think about. Hydration is the biggest thing. Minimizing or eliminating your alcohol use, because everything is magnified once you fly.
I'm here.
that length of distance, you know, where do you practice? Your practice field facilities aren't going to be what you're used to. So, you know, the league has its way of doing things. I don't know that they take into a lot of things into account regarding the players.
You know what? It was once explained to me, going across the ocean to play football, aside from the time change, it's like going to a bowl game. Because you're in a foreign territory as far as your practice facility and all the other things. You're there for a week, maybe 10 days. Maybe that's a little too long. But bottom line is you're there long enough to get reacclimated. But I think the travel is always the biggest challenge. Everything else would be like if you were in a bowl game.
And I'll tell you this, there are a lot of guys that don't like flying on your rosters. Yeah. And now you're talking about flying for an extended period over a body of water. Let's fly at night. Yeah, exactly. Give them a little something to make it easy for them to go to sleep. You wake up, you're there.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us today. We call this Huddle Up with Howard. We will be back next week. And I'm going to work on trying to get Brad Holmes. We'll have a guest for you next week here on Huddle Up with Howard. He's Howard Richards. I'm Mike Claiborne. We thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to talking to you next week on Huddle Up with Howard right here on STL Sports Central.